here. This is the most beautiful night of my life ever. This is fun. Help yourself to refreshments at any time. We're handling this like we handle Helicon West. You get up and move around. Don't want to go hungry or thirsty, okay? The only prohibition I have is if you're under 21, please don't have alcohol. Education of an Idaho farm girl. Into her mind of two-story clapboard, corner bedroom, braided rug, chenille bedspread. Into window unscreened, frog croaking chorus like doors open groaning, rusted out hinges. Into her skin, grit under ivory, bangs cut straight across forehead. Into the pirouette aquanet tutu, black tap shoes, runner skates. Into the white cold sunstroke hills with cows, demon sister, migraine, fainting spells. Into screech of white chalk slate board ladders to the apricots. Into a car swerved to semi's headlights, flip and roll, overturn onto crushed roof, hospital bed, bloody insides, bottle of aspirin. Into the principal's office, nurse's office, admissions office, college gates. She has come this far. She has left the cows, the fields, the barn, the breeze freshing in. She walks glass-like, thin gold lettering, book-spined, burnished. She is turning away from across the pasture, off the river, down the sloping hills, the river canyons, groaning, whistling, calling her back. She can't go down that road again, she's saying to herself. I knew you then, but oh, I know you better now. Where we come from informs our sense of self and cements our personality. The things we experience, the people we interact with as children, mold our intellect and sculpt our emotional framework far into our future, even as some of us try to put distance between what we lived then and what we know now. I wrote the poems in this book over a period of 20 years. Some have been revised numerous times, and some are almost as they were when they flowed from my pen onto my journal pages, from where I gleaned them. Glean. Glean is a farming term. It means to gather, grain usually, slowly and sometimes laboriously, little by little, following the reapers. It also means to learn, to discover, or find out. I find out all kinds of things about myself when I write poetry. This, for instance, little girls farming in the 50s. We sit up high on rusted seats, metal molded to fit a man's bottom, round holes for venting hot sweat over hours of plowing and planting. These relics of a family farm, wide rake bearing rows of curved steel tines, wagon-sized drill, discs mounted for sowing, wooden seed boxes lined up, sun-dried, lids curled. We open them as if we'll find treasure. There, in the bottom corner, hard grains left over from the last ever planting, little golden seeds amidst the chaff. That last line in the poem came as a big surprise to me, because I had never thought of anything golden on the farm. My brothers are here and they're laughing. But I didn't like farm life. Maybe they did, but oh no, they're going like this. But I didn't. It was hard, it was dirty, it was itchy, it was stinky, it was too hot, it was too cold. I never felt worthy or valued as a child. There wasn't time for emotional validation. We were all too busy with the work. So when that last line in the poem made me a little golden seed with so much potential right there all along, I was pretty happy. So this poem isn't in the book, the one I just read, and it's just, I've shortened it a little bit as an illustration. That first poem I read, Education of a Farm Girl, that came along after I finished the book. I think it resulted from reaping the right poems for the book. Reaping comes before gleaning. There is more to be gleaned. Many characters appear in this book. Topsy the llama, birds, trees, the Bear River, my siblings, some cousins, my teachers in the two-room school in Riverdale, that small farming community in southeast Idaho where I lived until I came to Logan in 1968 as a young bride. The book contains more history than its lines can hold. In just a few years' time, from 1956 to 1964 or 5. My mother's mother died. My sister's daughter died. My brother and my dad died, and our house burned down. Imagine my mother at 50 with more children to raise, this many tragedies, no husband, no house, she had to go find one, having to work full-time in town after having been on the farm with her children all those years, working hard, but nonetheless, now she was gone from 9 to 6. And knowing that we kids at 9, 11, 13 would feel like orphans. I have another poem, it's from the book, and is called Early Death. In this poem, it mentions watercress. Does everybody know what watercress is? Okay. Is this, some people, I don't know, Sean, do you know what watercress is? Okay, it's this little plant, and it grows in the water, and it's got tiny green leaves, and it's really kind of bitter, and you could put it on sandwiches. It's quite good. And it has, the poem has hay. So hay is what some of us think of as alfalfa. So when I say hay in the poem, you'll know what that is. And there are tools in the poem. Farmers in those days did everything. They rarely called for help. So they had a lot of tools. All right, here we go. Early death. Watercress thrives at the spring where he washed his spray rods, home from saving the hay with beetle-killing chlordane, poison arching over the fields, fine mist drifting into his lungs. Forever after, his tractor was driven by others, his sons, and then the neighbors who bought it, along with the cows, the hay, the grain, all the barn equipment. Gone, his tools from the shed, the vise, the grinding stone, anvil, and bellows. Gone, his clothes from the bedroom closet, his Sunday shoes, tie tacks and cufflinks, his razor, comb, and shaving kit, the soft brush he used to apply foam lather. Gone, his flashing gold tooth. We stopped eating watercress. 50 years later, it thrives there, its peppery flavor recalled as if we had never quit picking it, never quit layering its vivid green between dense, chunky slices of mother's homemade bread, spread with butter, sprinkled with salt and black pepper. Eyeing the green leaves thriving under spouting water piped in from the mountain's arteries, we don't dare break a stem to try. Memory, not the fear of dying, holds us back. On our tongues, the flavors mingle, peppery and fresh. My best friend Lorraine, who was the only other child in first and second grade with me in our 2-room little rock schoolhouse in Riverdale, had a lot of these same kinds of tragedies in her life. And this is a poem about that, and it's in the book. And this is one of those that hasn't gone through revision really very much. It sort of came out as it was, and I liked it that way. It's in an earlier book about roots, and it's called House Burning. And how many sections is it in? I think it might be in 4 sections, but I'll do that so you know. Section 1, and so on. House burning. A tall fire and wide consumed the old place, both stories in bright flame like orange x-rays, rooms exposed in frames, the whir and roar of heat thrown out across the lawn to elm and box elder, over hay fields, up the hillside like a nuclear blast. We were standing on the highway, shielding our faces, looking with astonished, burning eyes into closets where costume jewelry melted from boxes on shelves above ghost rags on glowing triangles, our dresses dissolving in shreds from wire hangers. In the kitchen, dishes shattered when cupboards collapsed onto countertops, crumbled into mangled pots and pans, disintegrated under iron bed frames, falling through the ceiling, aglow like fridge and stove and water heater. Gunshots, explosions livened the show, ammo stored on the back porch for hunting, and fireworks left over from the 4th of July. We held hands and cried, lives falling to ashes, a burning that lasted for centuries in one long, terrifying afternoon, and then embers all night glowing, in the morning heat still throwing warnings from the pile. We sifted through the blackened rubble and found marbles melted into shapes we'd never imagined, glass broken and glass intact, bed springs, old furnace on its side, Forerunner ice skate, gun stocks, and a perfectly preserved jar of peaches, hot to the touch, bright halved fruits boiled to soft yellow moons. But I imagine this. I came when the land was graded smooth of evidence. The only heap I sifted through was cold, picked over. The junk that was once a house, now scraped up and dumped, rock foundation and all, down the slope of a roadside hollow. Years, decades went by before we spoke of it, and I combined the fire in my mind with the one a childhood friend described, her house having burned to the ground like mine, her dad having died like mine, her sister, my brother. Our lives are far apart now, yet we are who I picture in my mind, holding hands on the highway, while fire welds my life to hers, the ashes, the beads, the peaches, what we witness, what we don't. It comes back, the heat of it, like a house of fire. I want to stop right here and say thank you, all of you. You are the reason I put this book together. You've been so supportive of your Logan Poet Laureate, showing up for the inauguration, inviting me to read for your clubs and schools and organizations, joining me for the poetry walkabouts, sending me your beautiful poems. I wanted to give you something beautiful in return, which brings me to Jane Catlin's gorgeous art. Thank you, Jane. Will you stand up? Jane. thank you for contributing the painting Coalesce. That's the title of it. It does for the book what your title implies. It makes everything coalesce. And thank you for helping me with the title for the book. I had a hard time with the book title, and she narrowed it down perfectly. And thanks to Maria Williams, who designed the book. She's in New York. She's interning there. No, now she has a job. She was interning. Now she designs for a famous company. Jane has brought prints for you to purchase, and we'll have them here, and we can sell them right here. I was going to go back there, but you can go back there and get more wine and coffee and treats, and people can come up here, and Jane and I will be up here with prints and books. That sound good, Jane?
Sure.
Okay. Some more thank yous. Thank you to my poetry group, Poetry at 3, Shannon and Brock and Felicia, and Isaac and Mary Ellen and Russ. Who did I forget? Oh, we've had other people in the poetry group, and it's been going on since 1993. It's a big deal. And I have a couple of Poetry at 3 anthologies here from our April reading this year. If you want to buy those, they're $5, and you get to see Russ's and everybody's poetry. You know, Russ writes about Idaho too, so if you like the Idaho thing, he's your guy. Thank you, Logan Library and Joseph Anderson. They have been the best. Joseph, will you stand up, because you're so wonderful? There he is, his hand is in there. Thank you to the mayor and the city council. They've been so good to work with. And thank you to the downtown businesses, the Bluebird. This is a gorgeous place to have a book launch. It's a great place for readings, and you should contact Millie. Will you just stand up, Millie? She's our famous coordinator for this whole event. Thanks to my tutors, a number of them came and helped us get things set up. They're wonderful. I work with them, and then they graduate and they go off and leave me, and it's awful, but while they're here, it's grand. Thank you, Friends of Poetry, Ann Schiffer and the Friends of Poetry, Helicon West, League of Utah Writers. Thank you, Chad and Tim, who made me believe that I could put a book out whether I had time or not. Thank you. Thanks to the good folks at UPR and KVNU and the Herald Journal and the Statesman. They're always so great to talk about the events in Logan, and they've been wonderful to the Poet Laureate. Thanks to my students and my former professors, and for those people who couldn't make it tonight, a lot of them, and we're recording this by the way, a lot of them have ordered books through the Amazon Book Blast, so they've ordered my book so that I can get these numbers. I have no idea what this means, but it sounds really good, and so if we run out of books tonight and you order from Amazon, that would be cool. And mostly to my sister Leanne, who saved the family farm, and to my sweet Mitch. Without him, nothing I have ever done could have happened. I will read just one more poem, the final poem in the book, because it speaks to the ironies and the paradoxes of history, the way our past can hold out its arms to us and never let us go. I chose each poem in this book with attention to story and meaning, hoping that the themes and images and characters in the poems would appeal to everyone, not just to poets or academics, but to everyone, to the entire community. And I hope this gift to you will be a fine black mix, like the poem titled Gift. And I hope it will snag some lovely memories for you, like the title poem Snag. And I hope it will spark an appreciation of family. Find a place inside your hearts for love and wildness and sweet forgiveness. I hope you'll enjoy reading the poems. Final poem. Overlook, Southeast Idaho, 20th century. 1. We walk on fire and water, earth's core, molten sheathed. I learned this in a 2-room school where Miss Swan taught the basics, 1st to 3rd, and Mr. Moser meted out geography, geology to big kids, 4th through 6th. Cold spring runs beneath grain fields, surfaces in plow rows, carves hollows through wind-crusted sagebrush terrain, too rocky for planting. Deer tracks lead off through stands of barren maples, roots probing the damp underground. On the way to Cold Spring, Stove Hollow, once a homestead, now lies cluttered with stove lids and chimney covers, teapots and wash tubs, wooden axle and iron wheels, discards glinting through decades of weeds. 2. From the 2-room cinder block school set down on river bottom, I learned history on a slant, the Western version, Indians beaten at Battle Creek, pioneer ancestors reaping the bounty upstream, passing it down to their children. Farmland lives on when you leave, in the curve of your brain, the bend of your back. My sister, who never attended the 2-room school, begged mother not to sell when dad died. The land held out its arms to her and never let go. Now we both walk these hills as if nothing in the world could matter more. From here, we see the influx of houses on the river bottom, cottonwoods dying, fences rising around hobby farms, horse pastures, our childhood farmhouse dwarfed on its island of acreage. This land our ancestors took, and we can't give back. 3. On south-facing hills, rattlesnakes drape over rocks and strike without warning, warm in their sunning, a lassitude they can afford. Down the hollow, cool in the shade, the house of our childhood waits. Thanks. Answer a question or two. Tim?
The schoolhouse you mentioned, I know driving up Immigration Canyon, there's an old, not real old, so, but it's an old schoolhouse. Is that the same schoolhouse, or where was the schoolhouse?
No, is that the yellow one that kind of sits out on the hillside? Yeah, that's not the one, that's Mink Creek.
Right.
And so Mink Creek and Riverdale were rivals, so different sports teams, and softball. So the school isn't there in Riverdale anymore. My sister lived next to it for quite a while. You know where the Riverdale Hot Springs is? Well, that was my Aunt Mary's house, Riverdale Hot Springs, the office there. And then the school was just south. How far do you think? Quarter of a mile from there. Yeah. Sean.
This is a question that Jennifer Simer has asked a couple authors, but I noticed that there were some political undertones in Overlook, and I was wondering what your opinion is on the role that writers and artists have in writing and creating art about politics and about political situations.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that poem was actually written in 2002, and it's gone through a number of revisions, lots of revisions. It was a pretty bitter poem when I first wrote it. Of course, it was inspired by walking the hills in Riverdale, and Cold Spring is an actual place, and I did have relatives who had homesteaded there and abandoned things. But when I was writing that poem, I was thinking of water, and I was thinking of all that goes on underneath where we live, we humans, and how much damage we tend to do. And since it was in 2002 and it was pretty politically riven, as I went through the years revising it, I decided that it was too much of a rant, and I wanted it to be more beautiful and grateful. And so yes, I have the hobby farms in there, and I have the houses that are popping up. You know, people can't afford to live in those kinds of places anymore. My sister, when she was little, we had a family letter that we wrote, my mother and her sisters, and every family letter that my mother wrote said, well, Leanne still loves the birds and the animals and the farm, and she did forever. And when my mother remarried, about 17 years after my dad died, and she moved to St. George, she offered to sell the farm. My little sister was a hard worker. She'd been at Pepperidge Farm forever, and she was the one who had always taken care of it, so she bought the farm, and she has kept it for the birds and the wild turkeys and the deer and all of those, the peacocks, forever after, and she's hoping we can always keep that farm the way it is. But other people in the valley aren't so fortunate. A lot of them have had to sell because they can't afford to live there anymore. And so it's becoming full of houses and a little bit gentrified even. And that's just the way of it. There are too many of us, and we look back with nostalgia and longing sometimes, don't we? Jennifer?
Well, you're such a prolific writer, and every event I ever see you at, you always have a notebook out, and you're always jotting things down. And I'm just wondering, is it because, are you just constantly, there's a whole world of poem, and that's what you're jotting down? Are you making your grocery list? Or are you, I feel like you're just always looking for poems.
I am, and I usually get them from other people's words. And so when I do the community collaborative poem, it's because people have sent me their lines and I put them together. But oftentimes when I'm writing, I'm just writing down what everybody else says because it's so amazing and beautiful. And then sometimes I construct a poem out of that. So your words could be in my poem. I'll always try to credit you, though. Ben.
My question sort of builds on that. You're such a wonderful linchpin for the literary community in Cache Valley, and you do so much at USU. You seem to do more than sort of humanly possible at times, which we're all grateful for. But I'm curious about how your public role, your role as poet laureate, your role at Helicon, informs your work or influences how you write and how you think about your work.
Oh gosh, and so sometimes I have to write poems. People ask me for them, and thank goodness, because otherwise I don't know if I'd be able to write any because I'm so busy. I love writing poetry. That's my main thing. And I love directing the Writing Center, but we've grown so much that it's pretty hard to find the time to write. So I'm really grateful when I can sit down in the audience and just write. I've done, 70-something events since I became Poet Laureate. And every time I do one, I think, man, this is the life for me. I love it. But I'm tired. I don't even know if I went where your question asked. I'm going to sit down and be quiet and sign my name. Thank you all for coming. I love you.